Welcome to the Orchid Hut. Today's video is a Catasetum update. My biggest and best pointer, don't water. Stay tuned for all of my other tips. Welcome back to the Orchid Hut. My name is Dana if you're new here, and today's video, as mentioned in the introduction, is all about Catasetums on the move this time of year. Now, I had my Catasetums winter resting bare rooted in my secondary growing space, and you know, you kind of check in on them from time to time, but then all of a sudden they start to put on new growth, and those new growths begin to get little baby roots. And when you see that happening, it is time to take action for repotting, because ideally you can get that Catasetum in a new potting situation if it's been bare rooted before those roots develop too much. Now I'm going to show you pictures of these Catasetums before they were potted, like you're seeing them today. And the roots that I'm going to show you on these Catasetums are almost too far gone. You know, I found myself a little bit behind with caring for my orchids because of my family situation being out of sorts for a while. And lo and behold, I walked in on these orchids one day and I was like, oh my gosh, those roots. I've got to get those in a pot. So the pictures I'm about to show you are roots that are almost too far gone to repot in a way that, you know, is not going to damage the root tips. So I have actually just two intergeneric hybrid Catasetums. This little tiny one is actually a baby bulb from one of these others here. So let's kind of get the names out of the way first. They're both Fred Clark developed Catasetums. This one is After Dark Sunset Valley Orchids, and it's the burgundy colored one. And then this one is the After Dark Black Pearl. And then this little tiny one is two bulbs from the Black Pearl. Okay, so we'll save that one for last. Okay, so the first photo that I'm going to show you is how this Catasetum looked with the roots and the new growth about 5 or 6 days ago, right before I got it in this pot. And you can see that, you know, the growth above the media has really developed just in 5 days time. And you can even see now down inside the pot, let me see, like right about here next to my finger, you can see where the roots have already taken down into the media. Okay. And now the second photo here is the Black Pearl. And again, you can tell that the growth has really developed since just 5 or 6 days ago. I can't exactly see the roots getting towards the edge of the pot yet, but probably will soon. Now, let's talk about this one. This one was the two smaller pseudobulbs that broke away from the Black Pearl, and the bigger one got a new growth on it, and it is developing some roots, so that's a good sign. This tiniest little one, I didn't hold out much hope, but there is just the littlest bit of new growth and root development there, so it may take off as well given enough time. Now, one of the things that I want to talk about in the video today is kind of like expectations for growth this year. For this tiniest one, I will be super thrilled if this bulb grows to be twice the size of the one next to it. That would be success. And if this littlest, tiniest one grows at all, that would be success. Do I expect this to bloom? Absolutely not. You know, I think these bulbs are going to have to get much larger and mature much more in successive years before I can expect this one to bloom. So this is really in its infancy. These two bloomed last year, so I would expect them to bloom again. For this one, if this growth right here gets as large or larger than the previous year's growth, which is right here, then that will be success. And of course, blooming will be success as well. So, you know, I'm looking for bulbs that are as large as the year before or maybe slightly larger. And this one as well. Last year's growth was here. If I get a new growth as large or larger than this one, that will be a success story. Okay, now, this one I repotted really quickly, I believe in my last Orchid Medley Chit Chat video. So if you would like to go back and watch that last Orchid Medley Chit Chat video, I will put a link in the upper right hand corner of the screen. It was about, you know, about 45 seconds of a repot. And these two, because I was so pressed for time to hurry up and get them in a pot, I had to do this without filming it. But there's just a couple of things that I want to talk about. I repotted these two the same way that this one was potted last year, and I was successful with that, with the exception of changing the media up just a bit. And I'll get to that in, I'll get into more detail with that in just a little bit. But just to briefly recap, the containers that I use for Catasetums are repurposed. I have another video for budget-friendly ideas for orchid supplies, and I'll put a link in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. This was just a granola container, and I repurposed it. And to quickly recap what I do, I add some drain holes about 1 inch above the bottom of the pot. There is a hot glued styrofoam piece down in the bottom, and I put the stake into that styrofoam piece so that it's nice and stable. I use some soft tie to secure these bulbs because until this orchid gets some roots, it's going to be rather unstable. And then the same thing for this one. You know, there's a piece of styrofoam in the bottom for the stake, the soft tie to hold it stable. And last year I did, my goodness, a very detailed Catasetum repot video, and I'll put a link to that in the upper right hand corner of the screen if you would like to see all of the details of the Catasetum repot in their entirety. Now, the one thing that I did change this year from last year's video is the media. For me, I don't think the content of the media is particularly specific, but you just do need to make sure that it is water retentive, because you probably are going to be watering these orchids every day in the height of the growing season anyway. Now, just because I had it, I don't know that I would have changed if I hadn't had this media, but I changed it because I thought this media might suit this orchid pretty well. So I had some Phalaenopsis mix, and I had used it for my Phalaenopsis orchids and found that I was not crazy about it. And the reason is because it's very fibrous. I believe this is cocoa husk. And for my Phalaenopsis orchids, I like to try to leave them in the same media for 2, maybe 3 years. And I was finding that before the end of the 2 years, this media was breaking down, causing the pot to be acidic. And you can tell that it's not exactly hardwood. It's a bit softer, extremely fibrous, and I think it just breaks down more easily. But for these Catasetums, they're only in this pot for 1 year, so I don't need to worry about this media breaking down in just a year's time. And because it's so fibrous, it is going to be more water retentive, which these Catasetum orchids prefer anyway. So because I had this bark left over that I wasn't crazy about for its original purpose, which was my Phalaenopsis orchids, I decided, well, I'm going to go ahead and use it here. Now, I did mix in just a tiny bit of charcoal, and I did mix in a little bit of extra sphagnum, especially around the base of the bulb where the roots are trying to get started. And then I mixed in a tiny little bit of perlite, just for aeration, because these pots don't have a lot of ways, you know, for the roots to get air, because the only ventilation is down here where I have melted these holes into the pot. Alrighty, so this is kind of an update on my Catasetums, and you know, do not water, do not water, do not water. I can't emphasize that enough. You want to wait until you see the roots of this new growth all the way down in the very bottom of the pot. And then when you do introduce water, only very, very slowly at the beginning, just a trickle until you work your way up to fully watering these orchids. They are also heavy feeders. I didn't do anything different last year except, you know, feed them like I do my other orchids, which was maybe 2 or 3 times a week in the height of the growing season. Okay, so thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video or learned something new, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you to all of the new subscribers. I hope you're enjoying the content, and don't forget to click that notification bell so you know when I post something new. Talk to you next time.